Hello everyone, TimeToGrind here, and today I wanted to talk about Insurmountable. And Insurmountable is a mountain climbing strategic roguelike that is super unique and is a one-of-a-kind experience. But before we get into the review, I do just want to let you guys know that I was given a review copy of the game at my request in order to make videos for you all. I never let that influence my reviews, I just like staying as transparent as possible. But overall, Insurmountable is the type of game that you mainly play just because it's such a unique experience that you can't really find anywhere else. The game starts off by having you select one of 3 different mountain climbers that all have different starting bonuses and equipment, and then you choose the mountain you're going to be tackling. And then the game puts you at the foot of a mountain that's made up in like a hex grid style and tells you to climb to the very top of the mountain. And there's a decent tutorial explaining all of the different mechanics, but overall you have your 5 main stats you need to worry about. First is your sanity, which can get lowered by supernatural events or traumatizing situations like finding the dead body of another fellow mountain climber. You also have your energy, which is super important because this is what you're actually going to be using to move around. You know, you use more energy the steeper the climb is. So if you're going to be moving between 2 tiles that are the same height, it's not going to cost that much energy. But if you're having to scale like a 3-story difference in height between 2 tiles, you're going to have to spend a lot more energy. You also have your body temperature, which gets lower the colder it is and the more you've been exposed to the elements, especially if the weather gets crazy bad like a snowstorm starting up. You then have your oxygen, which only really matters once you get super high up on the mountain in the dead zone where there isn't enough oxygen, so you can't stay high up for too long. And of course you have your health in case you fall during an event or get attacked by wild animals or things like that. So all of these are super important to balance because 1, if your health gets to 0, you automatically die, but also those other stats, if they get to 0, there's major consequences. So like if your sanity goes to 0, you start hallucinating and hearing things that can cause you to make major mistakes that hurt you, and if you can't breathe because you have no oxygen, that's obviously bad. Same with having no energy and having a super low body temperature. So you start scaling these mountains by trying to find the best route, and there's a ton of random events scattered in the mountains that are represented by tokens. They all pop up these impressive looking art pieces and all have a lot of dialogue and, kind of story to them describing what's happening, and most of the time you're going to have to make decisions that will impact the outcome. These are one of the coolest features about the game, but I will say that after getting to the second mountain, about an hour and a half in my game, I was already starting to see repeated events, and the events that are repeated aren't even randomized a little bit, it doesn't seem. Some games will have multiple randomized outcomes from a single event to make that single event, feel a lot more varied if you get the same event, multiple times. But this game doesn't seem to do that. Every time I got to a same event, it had the exact same outcomes from what I could see based on what I was doing. So the game definitely needs more of these events, considering that this is a big chunk of the game. The other huge part about the game is that you can actually level up your climber by gaining XP from events. And every time you level up, you can choose an active or passive perk that fall into a bunch of different kind of strategies and categories and stuff like that. So on my Let's Play series of the game, I kept taking a ton of perks that were focused on climbing at nighttime. So I would try to rest up, which would let you regain some stats by spending some time sleeping during the day, and then I would just try to make as much progress as I could in the middle of the night. And it was really, really cool, being able to actually kind of have some synergies and builds and stuff like that, almost like what you would expect from, a roguelike. And, the actives that are in the game, they're kind of just abilities that you use that are on cooldown. So, one of them could be something that has like a, 2-day cooldown, but for the next, when you use it like 8 hours, you run a lot faster, spending a lot less time. So there's a lot of unique passive abilities and active abilities, which do help keep that side of the game fresh. You also can find a bunch of different equipment like different boots, hats, climbing gear, and more that give you passive bonuses to different activities, like a climbing pick that lets you, maybe use less energy climbing steep parts, or a hiking stick that helps you walk faster on flat areas. I like this a lot. The only problem I have with it is it's way too tedious to constantly switch between the equipment. Because technically the optimal thing to do in the game, if you were just trying to, do the best you possibly could, would be to move move one tile and then look at all of your equipment and switch equipment based on what the next tile you're gonna walk on is, then move to that tile, then analyze your equipment and change and stuff like that, and just do that over and over and over. But that's not fun at all. So I tended to just overall keep the equipment on that I thought was better. So if I was in a generally flat area, you know, I would, you know, just kind of have like a walking stick. But it's kind of not, you know, the most fun when you know technically you should be switching equipment more often. You know, maybe if there was like an auto switch mechanic where if you had the equipment in your inventory space, it would automatically use the better gear you needed, and it would still be balanced because your inventory is obviously limited because you're hiking. You can't carry everything you find. There's also, you know, consumables you can find that you have to kind of balance in your inventory as well, like things that will, you know, boost up your energy, like, you know, a can of beans or something like that, and that's really cool as well. And the only other complaint I have with the game is the camera. The camera is a little bit janky and kind of like locks and glitches sometimes because I think it's tied to each individual tile, and it's super cool to zoom in sometimes and get these cool like cinematic moments of you climbing a mountain and stuff like that, but just there's a lot of times where it can be just a little bit wonky, you know, nothing too bad, just something I wanted to mention. And you know, once you get to the top of the mountain, you then have to actually kind of like scale back down to a kind of like extraction point, and then the whole point of the game is then that's not it. You got to move on to the next mountain, you know, using the same exact build you have and some of the same inventory, you know, and stuff like that. And then once you beat that, you have to move on to the third mountain. So it's definitely like a whole experience. You know, it's not you're just beating one mountain and that's it. It's kind of like a whole journey, which I do genuinely like. It's kind of like this whole experience, you know, magical thing that you got to go on, and I think that's really cool. So overall, Insurmountable is a genuinely enjoyable experience, mainly because it's super unique, but I will say I don't know if I could see myself playing the game past like a couple of hours. I think if they added more events, made a couple of changes to the gear mechanics and camera, it would be a lot better, but it's overall a fully launched game. It's not an early access or anything like that. So if you think it's worth it and it looks like you would have a lot of fun for a couple of hours, you know, mainly because it's really unique and, you know, just kind of fun in its own way, I would say definitely go for it. But if you're wanting something with more replayability, I might hold off unless it's on sale or something. But if you do want to see what full runs of the game actually look like, then definitely check out the Let's Play series I have over the game. We have 4 episodes out right now, and it is pretty enjoyable to kind of experience for the first time. And if you have played Insurmountable or just from watching gameplay, I would love to know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Also, if you enjoy roguelikes as much as I do, then consider subscribing and ringing that bell like all the big boy YouTubers say to see more content like this in the future. And if you're going to be grinding out some mountain climbing, then I wish you all luck and see you guys next time.